Hello, today we'll be speaking to Ben Matthias. He's the partner and executive director at NEA Ventures. Hello, Ben.
Hi.
Hi, so can you tell us what is it really that a venture capitalist does?
So the role of the venture capitalist is to invest money in startups, companies that have a high growth potential, and eventually deliver outsized returns to the investments. So what people in the venture capital industry do is they typically raise a fund from other investors, and they take the money from the fund and invest it in promising private companies with the expectation that those companies will grow very fast, and after 5 to 7 years they will sell their stake in those companies and deliver returns to the investors in the fund.
Okay, and do you think in some regard the role of a venture capitalist has always existed? Because they are people who need to help startups set up. So what do you think are the differences between new age venture capitalists and people who used to do this before?
The venture capital industry has always existed as long as there's been private enterprise. Even if you go back in history, Christopher Columbus was funded by a venture capitalist who basically gave him money to sail the seas and try and discover America. And if you look more recently, in the last 50 years, all businesses that have been started have been funded by investors. It's either been friends or family, or it's been institutions. The venture capital industry has really come into prominence in the last 20-30 years because of the technology, the growth in technology. So starting from the days of the creation of companies like Intel, when people started designing computer chips, then moving on to the age of the PCs, and then the age of the internet, and now more recently the mobile internet. The venture capital industry has really become more and more prominent in terms of defining new technologies and new businesses.
Yeah, okay. And do you think that the role of a venture capitalist varies depending on what industries he's trying to, invest in, or is it generally the same role?
Essentially, it's the same role. So with the different knowledge base potentially that you need to have, the role of the venture capitalist at the end of the day is to identify promising entrepreneurs, to give them enough capital that they need in order to grow their businesses and reach the goals of the business, to give whatever guidance that's possible to the entrepreneurs, to help connect them to other people and other potential business partners that would benefit their business, and then make sure that proper corporate governance is done in the companies. So that role is the same across all industries. The skill set for the venture capitalist may differ based on which industry he's focused on, and that skill set basically comes from knowledge of that industry. So for example, if you're investing in healthcare, you need to have knowledge of the healthcare industry, versus if you're investing in internet, you need to understand that industry, versus if you're investing in, let's say, energy, you need to understand the dynamics of that industry. But otherwise, the basic function of the venture capitalist is the same.
Yeah, and that said, do you think it's a job that someone can really study for? Like, could someone go to, college with an economics degree and then become a venture capitalist, or do they need some, touch of the field that they'll be investing in?
So the most successful venture capitalists today are people who actually ran their own industries, who are actually entrepreneurs at one point in time. So if you look at, let's say, Vinod Khosla was the founder of Sun Microsystems. Mark Andreessen was the founder of Netscape. So the most successful VCs typically tend to be people who are entrepreneurs, who have been successful as entrepreneurs, who have learned a lot from their entrepreneurial journey, and therefore understand what are the dynamics of businesses that they invest in, and can advise the entrepreneurs effectively. There are also VCs who have sort of risen from the ranks, and what that means is that right out of college they may join a VC firm as an analyst, and essentially support the partners in that VC firm by doing a lot of the research and number crunching, and then rise in the ranks. And I've seen both models work. The more prevalent model is the first one that I mentioned, where you actually become an entrepreneur and then become a VC.
Okay, and is being a VC something that you've always, aspired to do, and something that you've always wanted to do in life?
Me personally, no. This thing came up for me quite by chance about 7 years ago. Uh, Before that, I just kind of had a very vague notion of what the venture capital industry was. Um, but I'd been in the tech industry for many years before that, and I'd worked in high growth companies. And so I was lucky to get this opportunity. And so what I did bring to the table was my knowledge of how companies worked. What I had to learn on the job, which everybody has to do, is some of the dynamics of the venture capital industry. And that's why most VC firms are set up as partnerships. And the idea of that is that your partners keep you out of trouble, and you gain from the best practices and the knowledge that the collective partnership has gotten over the years.
And you said that it's not something that you really knew that you wanted to do. So what was it? What aspects of the job really drew you to it? What sealed the deal and said that this is what I wanted to do?
I think for me the most interesting part of it was the opportunity to get exposed to multiple industries. So my career had primarily been on one aspect of technology, which is enterprise software. This gave me the opportunity to get exposed to a whole lot of other sub-industries within technology, and also non-tech industries like energy, like healthcare. To me, that was the most exciting piece of it. The other obviously exciting piece was the opportunity to come back to India and get involved with the India growth story. And that's how my whole VC journey got started, because of the number of dollars that was suddenly coming to India from the US, and the US investors wanted people who could come back to India and actually manage that.
Okay, and as a venture capitalist, what does your regular day usually consist of? What are you usually doing on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, hundreds of things. So the typical work week is divided approximately a third gets spent in talking to the CEOs that you've invested in, the companies that you've invested in. Another third of your time gets spent looking at new investments and analyzing them. And then the remaining third gets spent in just networking. The thing about this industry is that you try to meet as many people as possible, get to know as many people as possible, because you never know when an insight you get from talking to somebody will be useful to you down the road. So one essential attribute of people who are successful in this industry is that you have to be sort of an outgoing people person, because you need to get to know a lot of people. You need to meet a lot of people, and so your work week gets spent in lots of meetings, lots of interactions, both with entrepreneurs as well as other people from industry.
Okay, and you touched about having people skills. What do you think are the other attributes someone would need to succeed in this business?
People skills is one. Analytical skills is the other one. So you do need to. So I'll give you an example. When somebody comes to ask for an investment, everything seems very positive. In the 1 hour pitch that the entrepreneur gives you, it's important to be able to connect the dots, so to speak. So to be able to understand what the person is doing and analyze the business and really identify, is this something that will be successful in the next 5 years? And that comes, to a large extent, that comes over time with experience, but it also is a skill set that you need to have, which is analytical skills. The third is patience. So in any startup company, any company, things very rarely actually go according to plan. And as an investor, as a VC, you need to have the patience to understand that things don't happen the way you expected them to. You need to course correct. Sometimes you need to completely change the business model. But things take time and don't always happen on time and on schedule as when you expected them to.
Okay, and what would your advice be to young people who might be aspiring to join a venture capitalist firm or become a venture capitalist?
So for kids who are getting out of college, if you can get into a VC firm, fabulous. That's a great opportunity. If you get in as an analyst into a VC firm, analyst or an associate, grab the opportunity, be prepared to work extremely hard for these early years of your career. It will be a very time-consuming job. It will be a role that will require you to work late hours and potentially weekends, but take the opportunity. If you don't get the opportunity, no problem, because as I said, most of the successful venture capitalists today have come through a different path, which is being entrepreneurs first. So join a startup company and work very hard to make that company successful, because that could also be a very logical path to becoming a venture capitalist one day.
Okay, thank you. I think our viewers will really benefit and enjoy this video. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.